Welcome. You're watching Physical Activity Researcher podcast. Interviews with world-leading physical activity researchers. Welcome everyone. In this episode, we are discussing experiences working as a lecturer in University of Applied Sciences and working in a sport institutes and technologies used in teaching and different projects in these institutes. And we have a great guest for this episode. Our guest has done his master's degree of exercise physiology in University of Jyväskylä in Finland. He has then worked as project worker and a lecturer in Arcada University of Applied Sciences in Helsinki, Finland. And currently he's working as a teacher in Solvalla Sports Institute and as a performance coach in Hintsa Performance. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, Mr. Jungell. Welcome, Jakob.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It's fun to be on this podcast.
Yeah, perfect. Great to have you in the podcast. So, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Shortly, I'm from southern Finland, from Espoo, and got into sports when I started to study in Arcada, as was told. And since then, I've been working with coaching and fitness testing, and also teaching in different ways. So my life basically is surrounded by sports.
Yeah, and we decided to talk a little bit about experiences working as a lecturer in University of Applied Sciences. In some countries they are called polytechnics, and they are kind of between there, not the university, but doing kind of things in university. And I think it can be interesting for many of our listeners. How is it working as a lecturer in applied sciences, and how is it working in Finland? So would you like to tell a little bit how are these applied science institutes in Finland, and what are the basic function?
Firstly, I'm speaking from my own experience and just only from this sports and health promotion program that I've been on, so I can't speak for all the applied sciences in Finland. But the main point is that it's a quite close step to universities in regard of the theoretical level that is used in the courses. But then again, there's also a lot of practical courses. So definitely more than at the university level. And even though I haven't worked at university, I studied, so I can at least compare my experience from being a student in university, and also my experience from being a student in University of Applied Sciences, and also a teacher there. So that's probably the biggest difference, the practical tasks that you have alongside the theoretical courses.
Yeah, and your title was there as you were working as a lecturer. How were the practicalities? How many percent you were teaching? How many percent you were running projects and so on?
Yeah, well, the classes varied, but anywhere from around 10 to perhaps 35. So not huge classes, but then again, quite suitable sizes in regard to all the practical tasks that we had. Because then again, when you have practical classes, it's hard to teach if the group is too big. So that's pretty common that the group sizes stay quite small.
Yeah, and you also had some projects there, and you were also working as a testing center. Could you tell a little bit more about those?
I could start from the testing part, and actually just a side note. Well, fitness testing in general is one of my biggest passions, and I see myself as kind of a specialist when we look at endurance testing and breathing gas analyzer testing. But I worked as basically the testing. I was in charge of testing there, and I was lucky or fortunate enough to be able to open the new Arcada Fitness Center, where we started up a very nice testing laboratory with treadmills and cycle ergometers and all kinds of high quality equipment. So I was really excited to work with that. So that was actually one of my biggest projects, planning all the equipment for the Arcada Fitness Center in general, and focusing a lot of course, on the testing center. And then I was also able to do tests, and then I was the one in charge of selling the tests outside, and managed to increase the amount of clients we had quite a lot.
Yeah, so I think most of the listeners probably don't know what is the goal of a fitness testing center in an applied sciences university. So could you tell who were your customers? What were all the different goals that you had for this kind of a lab?
Okay, yeah. Well, first of all, the fitness center was meant for the program that I was teaching on, and for a few different others regarding health as well. So just to make sure that we had facilities for all the courses that we held, that was one of the biggest things. But then again, we collaborated with a lot of schools. So from other schools around, groups came in and had their gym classes. The testing center then again was also, of course, for teaching, and a lot of teaching happened there. But we also had it just for outside customers, and I say the biggest group was middle-aged men in the working life. They somehow found the center pretty well. We didn't have that much marketing online, but some, and then actually a few ice hockey teams, high-level teams, found us as well. So I have to say that the marketing wasn't that big, because then again, our resources to take on tests was limited. So basically for anyone interested, but somehow it got centered more to I'd say middle-aged men, and then some teams as well.
Yeah, and let's say for this kind of testing or coaching, you need good marketing to get customers. That's just whoever you are, you need to get people to know you. And before we go to the equipment itself, you said that fitness testing is your passion. Why do you see it important? Why is it interesting?
Well, first of all, why I found it interesting. Perhaps because when I studied in Arcada many years ago, we had this fitness testing course, and we had the opportunity to go to this Helsinki medical testing center, where this one in Finland, or in small peers, quite famous tester Jyrki Aho had his practice. And what I found there, it was interesting to be just running on the treadmill and getting like all this kind of equipment on you. But I realized that I didn't really understand anything about the information that you got, all these graphs and numbers and so forth. And then I saw that he understood it, and our teacher, Reino Kärkkäinen, as well, they were really into it. And at that point, I decided I want to understand it myself. And somehow my journey towards understanding like a bit more, bit harder or more complicated data regarding testing started there. I'm still kind of on that journey. But then again, why is it important to test? I'd say if you're interested in especially endurance and endurance training, I'd say it's smart to know how to train with different intensities. And what's very common is that people train in general with far too high intensity, which might lead to some form of overtraining symptoms. And as we know, it's good to have a good base, so a lot of low intensity endurance, and then of course some more high intensity as well. But the foundation should be on this low intensity, and through these tests, you get to know these different training zones, and then apart from that, you also get to know your maximal fitness level. So for some, it might be really important to know what's the maximal capacity is, for instance, for your oxygen consumption, or your maximal running speed or cycling wattages.
So you had some ice hockey teams, and then you said that one group was middle-aged men. Were they recreational endurance athletes, or how they were, and what kind of tests you did, and what did they get out of it?
Yeah, recreational athletes mostly, like these weekend warriors, high performers in all aspects of life. At least that's the picture I got from just discussing with them. But a lot of triathletes and runners as well. But what's fun is that they're really motivated. It's nice to have them and discuss the results with them, because they're so into it. It's not just a test and then they go on. They really they want to understand, and that was also part of like this pedagogic that I had alongside my teaching. So I mean, you could get it. I got to practice the teaching in the classes and also with the clients in some ways.
And you said that you get a lot of numbers and a lot of information. What do you see as the most important points that you get out of endurance testing, for example, for these kind of recreational weekend warriors?
Well, perhaps like what I try to give the client is a way to train smart. So you see what the results are at the moment, and we go through, and then we make a plan from that. What should you do, and based on the results, how can we get there? So often clients come to me and they want to see in how good shape they are, when they should come to me and see in what shape they are. And I think there's a huge difference, because if you come to test and you want to see how good you are, you often get disappointed because some aspects of it don't match your ideal. But if you come to the test and just you're open and see, well, what's my strengths and what's my weaknesses and how should I improve them, then it's a better starting point.
Yeah, so you did quite a bit of endurance testing on a treadmill. What else did you have as equipment in the lab, and what were the decisions leading to buy these? I understood that you build it from the scratch, right?
Yeah, well, we actually had an old lab or a room that was this fitness testing lab, but we renewed a lot of the equipment. We had an old treadmill and so forth. But apart from this endurance testing equipment with this treadmill and the cycles and the breathing gas analyzer, we also had an in-body, so for body composition. And then we also had this FMS functional movement screening testing equipment, and as basically, or as an like a similar product, we have this TE3 movement stick, which is Finnish design, and which also gave quite good insight to people's movement abilities and disabilities. And of course, what I what I helped to get to the university as well was Firstbeat stress and recovery meters, and also Fibion meters for sedentary behavior.
Yeah, maybe the TE3 is quite interesting. I think many of our listeners haven't heard. So could you tell a little bit of the TE3 and how did you use it in the practical testing and maybe teaching?
Well, it was or we used it for movement screening, and basically it was a way to in a holistic way look at the whole body, because you can use it for different angles and of the body, and you can you do rotations and side bends and so forth. So you see where you have imbalances from left to right, for instance, and so it was an additional equipment when we talked about movement testing or movement screening, actually.
Yeah, so maybe for listeners a little bit, it's just a kind of a stick with a lot of technology. So basically, I think it has accelerometers and magnetometers, couple of there, and then it wirelessly connects to a tablet. And basically, it can detect when you do, for example, rotation, what are the angles. You can do side bends, you can do down, and you can basically see the active range of motion. And it also can be used as a biofeedback tool when you're training. But I think you use it more for kind of making assessments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting tool. And then you mentioned Firstbeat. Could you tell a little bit more about how did you use that and what is it?
Yeah, well, Firstbeat is a device for measuring stress and recovery, and it does it by with electrodes. So we look at heart rate variability, so the time between executive heartbeats, and it was used both in classes when we talked about stress and recovery, but we also had it in one project for the staff, where we looked at their health regarding stress and recovery, and also sedentary behavior. So it gives a good insight into how the person is internally doing. And Firstbeat is quite a good measure device also to estimate your fitness level, because if you take a 30-minute walk with an even pace, you get also an estimation of your VO2 max. So quite like versatile device, actually.
Yeah. So basically, it's a small device. You attach a couple of electrodes on the chest, and then
Yeah.
measures heart rate variability and gives quite a nice variables of several things. And yeah, then you had the Fibion, so analyzing sedentary behavior and physical activity. How did you use it?
Yeah, it was actually, or we bought it mainly for this project that we had, because we were interested in seeing how the staff were doing in terms of sedentary behavior. And a lot of persons in the staff also outside this project tried it. But then again, it was nice to have a device to show the students who are mainly active. My students who studied sports, how they got an insight that even though they are active on their free time, they might go play football or whatever they're doing. They might be very inactive during school or like own time. And to get this contrast that even though you're active, you can't just stay completely still. You need the breaks, and it was a very good device for open their eyes to that.
And you said that one of the main goals of this lab was teaching. How do you see different devices, different systems you have from the teacher's perspective? Because you need to do something probably in 2 hours time. You need to probably demonstrate the measurements and show the results. And then from educational perspective, what do the students learn from it? So how did you see these different systems fitting, and what were the kind of obstacles and good sides?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, we had two courses who focused on coaching and fitness testing. So basically, during 1 year, two courses, and they didn't have that many other courses at the time. Those who chose this, so a lot of focus was on basically the same area, even though it was quite wide. But as you said, yeah, there's a lot of devices and a lot to know about, and so of course there wasn't any expectations that everyone will learn how to use all this equipment like properly. So some devices, for instance, Firstbeat and Fibion, of course, we explained how to use them and what they measure, but I actually did all the, I gathered all the reports and so forth. So they didn't have to learn how to use these different programs to get the reports and perhaps make some adjustments. So I explained how to use the device, they used them, and then we just went through the results and helped them to interpret what they said. But then again, some of the more, apart from these devices, we also had tests that were simpler, these field tests. So usually field tests led up to testing with higher level equipment. So the field tests were the ones that they basically should know by heart, because it's more likely that they will use them in their life than working in a test laboratory. So the high level equipment was more to see what's the highest level, so to see. But we had different tasks where they for instance had a client and they were given a task to improve this person's fitness, and then they did for instance VO2 max test, and they were assigned to basically on their own plan and execute it, but always a teacher or someone who knew how to use them was with them. So it was this learning situation and also a client situation combined. But I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, the point is that the higher level equipment, if there wasn't a project involved where we had outside clients who were paying, they didn't have to know how to use them like completely. They just had to see how to use them.
Yeah, and I think we didn't clarify yet what kind of students you have. So what all students or degree programs were using the lab?
Okay, yeah. Well, I was teaching the sports instructors. So basically, I don't know if in other countries if it's called something else, but it's basically like, is it in English like candidate level? So before you get your master's, it's equal to that, but more perhaps practical. But then the physiotherapy students used it, this lab as well, and I think also we had acute, like persons working in an ambulance. So we had a program for that. So they also used some of the fitness testing equipment as well.
Yeah, and basically you said that the higher level or the lab, big lab equipment, they didn't need to know how to use very well, just to see how it is and learn from it. What were the learning goals in the sport instructor program? That is it more about understanding the physiology, how it works, how it's measured, or was it that they actually learn to measure and give feedback for their potential customers in the future?
Well, I said the main focus is on understanding the physiology and how it responds to different kind of exercising. And when we're talking testing, because quite a lot of them will work with clients where they try to in some way improve the fitness level. And as we know, it's important to be able to prove to the client and perhaps to the coach himself or him or herself that some improvement has happened. And you have to have some form of device or some test or some measure to see it. So the point is to have this palette of like a lot of tests where you try to or that you can use. And as I said, like the field tests, that's the base that we expect that they have a better understanding of, and then they should know about this more high level equipment testing, and in best case they get to use it as well somewhere in Finland or wherever they end up.
Yeah, and before we wrap this part where we talk about universities of applied sciences, how did you feel? What were the best parts of the job working there as a lecturer? What could have been been better or kind of fit more for your passion? How did you feel working?
Yeah, well, it was nice. Well, actually, I worked there as a substitute teacher because the one I stepped in for went on parental leave, and it was really exciting for me because I graduated from University of Jyväskylä in 2015 and 2000 and in 2017 I think I actually started, if I don't remember correct, but I think
Yeah.
2016 or 17. Anyway,
Yeah.
1 or 2 years after I graduated, I ended up in Arcada, and I remember thinking that this could end up either way, either a catastrophe, I make a fool out of myself, or then I could step up and take myself to the next level. And somehow I feel that I managed to take this more positive pathway. And what was funny was that I wasn't that much older than most of my students, only a few years, and I had a few students that were a lot of like quite a few years older than me, and it was a nice setup, and somehow it worked real nice. I felt that in class I had the authority, and I was respected, but then again outside classes I came quite close to the students, so I have a real positive experience of working with the students. And then it was nice. Well, it was interesting also because I've been a student there, and then I had all my colleagues were my former teachers, so it was quite kind of a weird setup for me. But I liked it, and I was warmly welcomed, and Arcada was a real nice place to work at. But something to improve, I would say, the sports instructor program is quite small, and the resources and facilities, even though we have the fitness hall, or we had because I'm there more, it's quite limited. So more resources and more abilities and to use different equipment and surroundings would be better, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and you said that this can go bad or good, and there was kind of stepping up phase. Do you have any tips to share our listeners who might be taking their first job, and maybe the students are of same age and other things? What would you be your advice for them?
Just be brave and take a chance. I mean, what helped me was that, I mean, even though I felt insecure, on the other hand, I knew that I knew my stuff. I knew the subjects that I had to teach, and of course, I had subjects or classes that wasn't my key competence, but I just studied that. I mean, I was structured, and I think that's actually my advice: be structured, because I planned ahead and I was prepared, and that helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think for many people who start teaching, they have usually not studied to become teachers. There is a lot of challenges, like you get there and it might be difficult to get the authority, and there's many things in some countries. For example, in UK, they are asking this student satisfaction thing, and the students can kind of criticize the teachers pretty openly, and it's not maybe the nicest thing when you start something new and then you get quite a rough feedback. So I think there's a lot of challenges, but it's good to hear that it went pretty well for you.
Yeah. Well, we're soon going to talk about Solvalla, the Sports Institute, but because here's a bridge where I can comment. Actually, I took my vocational teachers study. I did it or actually when I ended in Arcada, I took them. So I actually wasn't formally a teacher when I was there. It was just my substitute title. But then I took this title, and then I started at Solvalla, and actually I felt more like controversy with the students when I basically had graduated as a teacher than before. So, but we can come back to that soon.
Yeah, so we will wrap up this part one, and in the second part we will talk more about working in a sport institute in Finland, and also Jakob's works at Hintsa Performance. So we will have a short break and we will get back soon in part 2.